let's move on now to just a look at this week as a whole, and we'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So they played 3 games this week. They lost to the Hornets, they won against the Heat, and they lost to the Bulls tonight with no Luka. The good, I think that the defense has been great for stretches. It's not always consistent, which we'll get to, but entering this Bulls game, they were 6th in defensive rating. And so despite all their weaknesses, they have had moments where they've played very good defense.
I would say that is true.
It is true. Moving on.
Okay. No. I would say we need more games because part of that 6th in defensive rating is that Clipper game, which, can we just admit,
it counts.
The Clippers did not show up.
Let me tell you,
okay,
of the 37 teams that have had a 50-plus point blowout, 2 of them, I believe, won the championship.
So the percentages are on the Mavs side.
It's
what you're
possible.
Saying. So you're saying there's a chance.
Now, like 30% of those teams didn't make the playoffs also, but 2 of them won the championship.
So what you're saying is that stat means nothing. So my point about the defense was you had that blowout with the Clippers. The Clippers clearly didn't show up.
Yeah.
And then you had really good defense against the Heat, but I don't know. I guess I don't believe it. Because I've also seen games like
there was good defense in this game.
There were good stretches, but there were also some atrocious stretches. And then that Hornets game, and then that Lakers game, 138 points.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and
God, I forgot about that completely.
Yeah. And so that's like, I don't believe that number yet. Let's wait until we get more games under our belt before we see how good their defense really is.
So I'm going to, and let's move on. So the good was the defense has been very good in stretches. The bad is that it's inconsistent, which is what you're saying. And I would attribute that to their personnel. They have some guys that are pretty good to really good defenders. Josh Richardson, Dorian, Maxey, James Johnson. Like, they have these guys that are good defenders, but they have guys that are on the other end of the spectrum. Tim Hardaway Jr., Dwight Powell. And so I think that leads to this inconsistent defense. But I think that there's an opportunity there to evaluate your roster. And so that you can see your guys that are good defenders, you know, the Josh Richardsons, the Dorian Finney-Smith, whether he starts or not, just, you know, the fact he's on your roster, he's a good defender. And then you can see the difference between those guys and Tim Hardaway Jr., whereas last year, maybe we didn't have that comparison on the team, and now you're able to evaluate those players and think, okay, maybe we just don't have the personnel to be a top 10 or 5 defense.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to make a move at the trade deadline this year.
Or just eventually, if
they're
they
do
want to be a very good defensive team.
The free agent class this year sucks. So there's no need to go into this year.
What are you talking about? Kawhi Leonard is going to be a free agent.
The Mavs are going to get him, right?
Well, they're getting a meeting, at least.
There's nobody in free agency.
Yeah.
So there's no need to keep all of this salary cap space going into free agency. Use these expiring contracts and try to swing a Porzingis type deal. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know who's out there, but bring somebody else in that can play defense and can make a shot on a consistent basis.
I just don't think they have the personnel to be a top 10 or 5 defense. And that's, you know, it is what it is. They're trying. I know Carlisle has made it a focus, but I don't think they have the players for it yet.
And what sucks is, if we're ever going to get into the ugly, is it's sacrificing on their offense.
Yeah, so okay, we'll move on to the ugly. The ugly is
their offense. It's atrocious. Like they can't shoot, and they have shooters out there, but like Hardaway did not start the year very well.
He's been inconsistent.
Dorian can't seem to hit one when somebody's closing out.
Yeah, he has struggled.
Like, if he's wide open and nobody closes out, he's a really good shooter. But when he has to rush it just a tiny, tiny bit, he can't make it.
Yeah, entering the Bulls game, they were 17th in offensive rating. Now, you made a point while we were talking earlier that it looks like they're really just focused on defense only, and they're not really concerned about the offense. And so it's struggling because they're just not really working on it right now. They really want to improve their defense, which I think is possible. I think even Carlisle said they spent the past 2 practices only doing defense. They didn't even work on offense. And I think a lot of times when we see their poor offense, it's because, I've said this before, there's not a lot of player movement. They kind of all stand around on their shooting spots and they wait for Luka to make a play.
There's not very good chemistry.
Yeah.
Like on-court chemistry. And the Richardson-Hardaway chemistry isn't quite working. And I think it's probably because both of them are 2 guards. And neither one of them's a 3.
I agree.
And one of them's being asked to play the 3. And it makes a difference. I don't care what anybody says. It's possessionless basketball. It's not really. I mean, there's still positions out there.
Yeah.
And Hardaway and Richardson both have the skills for a prototypical 2 guard. Neither one of them have what you're looking for in a prototypical 3 guard.
I had a thought today.
Okay.
So last year was really fun because they were good for the first time in like a long time, and it was more than just being good. You could see the future in that team, in some of those guys, and so we felt like, man, this is a really big step forward. But this year, it's not about having fun; it's about becoming a good team. And so it's more about working on defense and working out these kinks. And so it's kind of like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Like this year, they're actually going through growing pains because they're actually growing. Like they're actually working on things. And some of their guys are not good at those things that they're working on. But they have to go through this in order to become a good team.
You know, all that is great.
Did I sound like Donnie Nelson just then?
You're trying to sell us on the team.
Losing is learning.
Yes. No.
So, anyways, yeah, I think, to me, I've seen the defense that they are trying, and there's been good stretches, but it's just not consistent enough. And I don't think they have the personnel to be consistent at it.
I mean, let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
They look terrible right now.
Sometimes.
To start this season, they're 2-4.
You know, that's
2-4. I know it's early, but like, how many under 500 games are we gonna get to where we're like, okay,
when should we start
this isn't working? Yes.
Yeah. I'd say I'm going to evaluate the players, like in terms of the entire team until Kristaps comes back. I don't know. But I mean, I think we've seen some clear things from the guys that are playing to tell us what they are like individually, at least. Was that passive aggressive enough?
I think so.
Was that on brand?
I think it was.
I feel like that was a really on brand statement.
You say it as if somehow you're going to get in the locker room and do an interview and you don't want the Mavs to block you.
I just want everyone to like me.
Okay.
So I have to say it in a way to where no one really knows how I feel. Whereas you just kind of like, whatever, everyone sucks.
Pretty much.
I don't have the confidence to say that. Okay, those are our takes on the good, the bad, and the ugly.